alternate locations. And if there are no alternate locations that allow them to still reach the location of the product, then they have to assure that they are using best available technology. And that's very specifically worded because technology is changing every day. So what's the best today may not be the best, 10 years ago. Probably isn't.
Yeah.
So whatever is currently the best available technology is what they've got to use. So those two things we say, the neighbors affected by Triple Creek, our neighborhood group, says that they did not meet those two. Number one, the location, the best alternative location. They're saying this is it by default because there was originally going to be a project about this size reaching the minerals from half a mile or so away here, called at the Frontier School, I believe it is. And that was much closer to homes. So they backed out of that pretty quickly and said, okay, this meets it. So since this meets the requirements of that location, therefore it must be the best. And we're saying, no, go find alternate locations for this now before you approve it. And COGCC did not require them to do that, so that was number one. Number two, best available technology. In our case, it is piping the minerals off-site. There is also a new technology that Anadarko has been using for a few years called high vapor pressure, HVP. And instead of taking the oil out of the wells here and putting them through a separator to separate the three components, they take it all directly from the wellhead and put that mix into a pipeline to another location where it's better access for trucks. And they do the production, the processing there. They do the separation there and haul it away from there. So that's not as tight an urban area as this. And the other thing is you're going directly from the wellhead to one pipeline. You don't have to go from the wellhead to a temporary tank, then go through the separator, then go into the truck. Every time you go through one of those processes where you're transferred from one transferal medium to another, you have the potential for spills, accidents, release of VOCs, you name it.
All the things that
all
can
those
affect
things,
your health.
all those things are increased. Who's going to say if it's to the point of being likely, but undeniably the potential for those problems is increased every time you transfer from one storage location to another.
Sure.
So we're still going to have that to a certain extent, because we're separating here and we're going to be put into the pipeline. But at least it's not going to be transferred into a truck, which is potentially hazardous for the driver, potentially hazardous for our neighborhood because of the streets and these huge trucks that are going up a rather substantial hill here, and also trying to fight traffic while they're rebuilding this whole section of 71st Avenue and removing and replacing this bridge down here at the bottom at Cheap Draw. So, what was that? So, we're saying that the COGCC, when they denied that they have the authority to force extraction to use a pipeline, we say
no, because of the law.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's
So
a
this
quote.
So this is the first test of the urban mitigation.
Yes, we are the first site, the first project on the Front Range who falls under the rules of the large urban mitigation area protections. And so when COGCC says we don't have the authority to force them, or, well, it's just too expensive for them. And then lo and behold, as an aside, here's extraction doing it on their own anyway. What does that mean? So we say that they are not meeting those two criteria. They're not forcing those regulations onto the operator. And this is a terrible precedent to set because it's the first case. So far as we are concerned, an operator like Extraction, who as a business model goes into urban areas, shoehorns in 1,001 feet right there. Since they do that as a method of, as a normal process in their business model, and since the COGCC is never going to turn them down, there is not a city or town in Colorado that is safe from the combination of an urban driller and the existing COGCC. It's just, they're just going to get whatever they want. So we have to sue them. Even if, despite the case that now we got a lot of what we're looking for, we're very happy about the pipeline. Not going to take away from that. We still are going to have transfers from one location to another, but we're not going to have these heavy trucks going over our neighborhood streets, and that's enormous. So we're very happy about that, but that has nothing to do with the COGCC. They have not changed their posture, and they're still saying we don't have the authority to force these poor operators from the oil and gas industry to do something that we think is too expensive. So that's why we're doing it.
For sure. So it's the first case, so this will be the test.
Yeah.
Okay, this is pretty cool.
It is.
So other than just kind of like the brass tacks here, I guess, with like where everything is, the regulatory process, like what are some of your, I guess, fears, concerns about this? I mean, you've expressed some of them about both of you. If you want to just kind of like give some of the background of like why you think having this thing within, I don't know how many feet it is from your house, but around 1,000 feet from both of your homes. What are your feelings about that, I guess, in general? Like, do you think it's, I mean, you've expressed a little bit about it, but.
Well, hers are much more profound than mine. I'll address mine really quickly.
Okay.
First is that, there's just a natural concern for fumes, for VOCs, for traffic problems on our neighborhood streets. My wife has asthma. She usually has one bout with asthma each winter. She has had one almost interrupted bout that's lasted all winter long. We've had people who, depending on the direction of the wind, will say that is a terrible petroleum smell that is wafting over our neighborhood this morning, and to the extent that they're almost forced back inside their homes.
Sure.
Well, you call up COGCC, and all they can do is send their inspector out, who comes out, even if he's efficient, comes out the next day, and there's no evidence of it. And what records they keep don't show anything abnormal going on, to whatever extent those records are worthwhile. So yeah, we're kind of stuck. Also the noise. There's one case where, give the devil his due, they're using the electric rig, and it is, even though you could hear it a while ago, it's much better than we feared with the diesel generator. And then the pipeline, of course, is huge for us. But the fracking, they're going to be using a company called Liberty Oilfield Services, and they have some kind of process that's called quiet fleet technology. And so they have ads that are on YouTube that you can watch, and it shows that the fracking operation should be much more quiet than the traditional fracking operation. So that we have yet to see, and we won't see it until, that once they start that operation in a month or so. But realistically speaking, anything like that, any technology, it's not going to be 100% functional 100% of the time. We are going to get hit by some noise at some point. We're going to be possibly hit with some vibration. So those are more of the concerns. Other concerns, of course, are just having to do with the whole fossil fuel and petroleum process, is that the produced water, which is what comes back out of the ground after you use it to frack, They take huge tanks of water that are stored over here, and that's going to be pumped into the system, and that's the fracking fluid. When that, and it's pumped in under really high pressure, when that is relieved, when that pressure is relieved, the first thing that comes back is that produced water. And that has to be hauled away and put into injection wells over here, way east of Greeley. So if you've been watching Oklahoma and their experiences, I mean, in the 50s, I guess, I don't know exact numbers or exact dates, but there was the time in the not too distant past where they had no such thing as earthquakes. They have earthquakes every day now, all across the state, because of the locations of all of these injection wells. So they're studying that, saying maybe we shouldn't pump it in under such high pressure. I mean, it's an evolving technology. And if we put as much effort into renewable energy as we put into this, oh man, we'd be covered.
Especially in this state where it's sunny as it is right now. I mean,
I've heard it. I've heard it. You guys can maybe verify this on your own, but I've heard that in the western United States, where BLM owns so much land, that if you were to use solar panels in 5% of BLM lands, I mean, it would be hideous, it would be enormous, but still, 5% of this one federal agency's lands would cover all of our energy needs, period.
Yeah, no,
Look it up. I don't know. I'd love to see somebody verify that.
I've seen that too. There's a guy, we live in Montana, and there's a guy that's called Solar Guy that came to Montana to advocate for solar stuff, and I think he's done it in other places, but he basically said the same thing.
Yeah, and wind,
I believe it's true. If you just put solar arrays in 5% of the land.
Wind power is a big deal here. In Windsor, there is a very large Danish company who started up their United States operations just 5 miles up the road here in Windsor. And so they ship wind turbines all over the country. And on a clear day, you could see about 40 of them up there right on the horizon next to the, matter of fact, you pass them coming down the interstate. So either the interstate or 34, both, one will be on the east side, one will be on the west. But they're all over the place. There's got to be, I don't know, maybe there's 100, but it's enormous.
Sure.
Okay, so that's my concerns.
Okay.
Dawn puts me to shame.
Okay.
Well, what they did first, this 32-foot wall you see around the well site, they actually had my whole property walled off with a 32-foot wall.
Okay.
On the south and the west side. It was horrible. I mean, you couldn't even get sunshine in there. It was depressing. And I told these guys, I feel like I'm in prison in my own home. Never talked to me about before they stuck that wall up. Surprisingly, the end of March, the construction foreman reached out to me for the second time and said he wanted to talk to me about the wall because I had complained continuously to him about this wall. And so he met us with another guy from extraction, and it was amazing. It was such a huge turnaround. It was like, whatever you want us to do with this wall, we'll do. And I'm like, well, why in the world wouldn't you have talked to me before you put all the time, energy, and expense in putting this wall up? I said, I want this whole west end to open back up. And I said, as far as the one that's on the south side, which blocks I don't have to see the truck sitting right next to my house. I'm fine with that being up, but I want the whole thing dropped 16
So
foot.
that's here.
This is crazy being walled off like this.
And then the other wall went
Which they
around
did
here.
do within just a couple of days after that.
So she was not able to see the mountains at all.
Your entire view shed was just real.
Yes.
View.
But I've actually had some house movement throughout this whole thing since the 1st of January. And I keep track of it on my phone. Every time it happens, I grab the phone, put the time, the date, and what happened. And I either call it a shake or a boom, because the shake, it's like you could feel a truck right next to you go by and you feel,
Sure.
the boom, my house has movement. I mean, you can feel the pictures will go crooked. So I filed the first complaint with COGCC, and they sent the inspector up, and he said that he had checked extraction records and they hadn't done anything that could have caused that to happen, and basically blew me off. Well, on April the 10th at 9:15 that night, I had such a huge boom, all my lights flickered. I honestly thought one of the limbs from the big 120-year-old cottonwoods had come down on the house because it shook so bad. So I went out with the flashlight and nothing. So I filed a second complaint. after I filed that one, I got an email from one of the gals in the office stating, well, you're probably going to get the same response you did the first time. Do you really want me to put this through as a complaint? And they attributed it to noise. And I wrote back and I said, number one, this is not a noise problem. This is a house movement problem. And yes, I want you to file it as a complaint. And in light of what happened at Firestone, I would think that you would be doing more checking into a house movement at this time. This is not a noise problem. Yes,
Sure.
file the complaint. I still haven't heard back.
So that was like about a month and a half ago or so.
But I've had it happen over 100 times since January 10th,
Wow. And this is during the drilling process.
which is a little scary. And, you know, I said to Lowell, because my house was built in 1897, it's the oldest house out here, which of course
Generally
through the
not
years has been
super
updated,
old,
but
yeah.
gas lines and stuff, if it shakes it enough in enough time,
Yeah.
is it going to split a line? And Lowell said, if you smell gas, grab the dogs and get out, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like Firestone, they didn't have any smell to that gas. I mean, those poor people
gonna
had no
yeah,
forewarning.
the thing is, this gas will be odorless for the most part because it's not processed.
Yeah.
That's what's scary. So your house, and you think it's because of like essentially the drilling rig? That's like
sorry,
what do you attribute like the shakes to? Is essentially the drilling activity potential like out there?
I'm still not
Oh,
getting it.
Yeah.
Is
Do you attribute the movement of the house to the
Well,
drilling
it's something
operation?
they're doing there
Something
because
they're
I've lived there so many years.
Never's
this has
happened
never
before.
happened. And that's what I told him. I said, you know, if this was something that was a natural thing from whatever, I wouldn't be complaining. But this has never happened, and it's not normal for your house to move like that.
Absolutely. Okay.
I mean, it's just not something that they're doing. So now I'm a little worried when they start the fracking. Okay, now what's that actually going to do? You know. So I don't know. It has not been a positive thing. One thing I found real scary through this whole thing, going through all we have, is that the COGCC really doesn't have anybody overseeing them. They say supposedly the governor. The governor says he can't control the COGCC. So nobody's controlling this, whatever they want to call him, who has so much power and so much money. They do whatever they want to do, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah, because
And they certainly don't care about public health and welfare.
sure, because so Kevin and I, we work with a lot of the oil and gas conservation commissions, and most of their missions is literally to make sure that oil is extracted, and to make sure that there's no waste.
And that nothing is left in the ground.
Yeah, exactly, and that's their statutory. That's their only authority essentially, and it's interesting because like Hickenlooper, right, worked for Exxon for 20 years before he's governor.
Okay.
That's his history.
Before he was a brewmeister.
Yeah, and so Hickenlooper is like kind of like he is who he is.
Yeah, there's the cynical approach, which seems to have more and more credence every day, that when a week ago, when he said to the COGCC, you shall not file an appeal